Here's a simple truth about negotiation. You cannot negotiate if you're not in a position to say no, or if you just can't walk away. All right? I mean, that's the thing. Because if you're negotiating and saying that, yeah, well, I can't walk away, then what you're actually saying is, I'm willing to accept whatever deal they put on the table. And sometimes that deal that they're putting on the table is not going to be favoring you. So you need to be in a position to say, is my reservation value, and therefore I can walk away. Which is just a smart way of saying you need a Batna. So this is where your Batna, that is best alternative to a negotiated agreement, comes in. And with the Batna, okay, with your best alternative to the negotiated agreement, we are simply talking about the standard against which any proposed agreement should be measured. In short, when you know your alternatives, okay, when you have an alternative, a best alternative, not just any alternative, then you know the point at which you can easily just say no. So in this video, we're going to talk about 6 ways to make your Batna strategy more effective. But before you do that, here's a quick thing I need for you to remember. So if you're serious about learning negotiation, okay, first of all, I've added lists, okay, a link to one of my tutorials on commercial negotiation, so you can check that out. In addition to that, all this information, okay, so managing contractual risks, okay, commercial contracting, managing supply chain risks, all this stuff on procurement and supply, okay, and supply chain. They're available on my website, so0network.com. Make sure you check that one out once you're done. So there you'll get video tutorials, you'll get PDF downloads, you'll get practice exercises, you'll get articles, okay? You can even sign up to the regular newsletter. So every time you get this sort of stuff sent to your email. So go to the website, see what you like. Anyway, having said that, let's move on. Let's start by understanding how people typically use Batna when they're negotiating, okay? So a practical look at that. So you don't just want to make it some hypothetical stuff. So here's a practical look at how this works in the real world. Let's assume you're negotiating for a software engineering job and you are expecting $100,000, but the company offers 90. Okay? Now, in this case, you have a choice. You can accept whatever the company is offering and say, you know, that's all they're offering, and as much as I wanted more, so I don't have a choice. That's because you don't have leverage. If you have leverage, then you can't do that. So the only way to counter the company's offer is to make sure that you have leverage. Meaning what? Meaning, now assuming you have a 95,000 offer from another job, that's leverage. So then the question becomes, how do you use that? Okay, it's one thing to have leverage. It's another thing to know how to use that leverage. So how you use that? And so in this case, you could say something like, I appreciate the offer, but I have another opportunity that offers $95,000. I would love to work here, but I was hoping for something in the $100,000 range. Is there room to improve the offer? So they made you an offer, okay? You've countered that offer, and you're not just countering that offer because it's just words. No, you're countering the offer because you've actually applied for other jobs and they made you an offer. That's the reason why you don't, again, remember, you don't walk into a negotiation if you don't have leverage. The same thing, like you don't go for a job interview assuming that's the only interview that you go. Yes, do that. Okay, do that if that's the only choice you have. But for the most part, if you're strategic, you always apply for, many things. So anyway, in this case, after you've countered their offer, what is likely to happen? So here's what is likely to happen. Number one, the company matches or exceeds your request. So maybe 100,000 plus, in which case you accept. Or number two, the company improves the offer. For example, 95,000, or give you better benefits, in which case you evaluate your options. Or number three, they refuse to increase the offer, and that means you take the other job. That approach, in this case, you're talking about a job interview, but that approach can work for just about any type of negotiation, okay? Whether it's supplying chain, okay? Whether it's just negotiating with some contract, whatever. The point is, at any given point, it's always going to be, this is what's on the table, and if you have leverage, then you can say, yeah, well, I get that, here's another choice. Like, you see all these things, you see like in geopolitics, okay? Like the US thing with Europe and all that, and the tariffs, and all of these things just come down to leverage. If you don't have leverage, then it's just a politician running their mouth saying that if they tariff us, we tariff them back. It's like, sure, say that to impress your citizens, okay? And then they think you're a strong person, except your GDP heavily depends on whatever those other people are producing. You have no leverage. So just do whatever they are saying, negotiate better terms. That's the thing. So the point here is you always need to have a Batna. And the greater the Batna, the greater your bargaining power. The question here then becomes, how do you make your Batna strategy even more effective? And so there are a number of ways you can do this. Number one, never reveal a weak Batna. You see, you don't want to let the other person know, your counterpart, okay? You don't want to let them know that, for example, that you are looking for a supplier because your last supplier just dropped you, and you have a contract that is time sensitive, and therefore you need someone to supply these raw materials as fast as possible, otherwise you're going to land into a lawsuit. If you do that, effectively what you've actually done is you've told them that you're in a desperate position, and therefore they can take advantage of you. So what that will mean, it will mean you'll be contracting, okay? You'll be contracting on their terms, and you don't have much options, that's what you're saying, but to close the deal on your partner's terms. So the problem is that what you actually have is not a Batna, is a Watna. What you have is a worse alternative to a negotiated agreement. So don't do that. If you have a weak Batna, don't reveal it. That's strategy one. Number two, don't bluff about your Batna. Okay? I mean, look, you may want them to know that you have leverage. And then you might actually say, yeah, well, we have this other supplier who's giving us 15%, blah, blah, blah. You can say all that stuff. The problem is, what if that turns out to be a lie? And then they just say, okay, in that case, go work with them. Or if they find out and they're not telling you, and so they're going to string you along. Or if they realize that alternative is something that is time sensitive, and therefore they just waste your time until that deal expires, like a job offer, when you're told accept within 2 days. And so they just string you along, and then after 2 days, now you don't have a choice. The point is, you have to be careful, okay? You have to be careful. Now, if negotiating with a supplier, so for example, you can say, we value our long-standing relationship, but you have another supplier offering similar quality at a 5% lower cost. We'd prefer to continue working with you, but we need a more competitive price to justify it. So in this case, you've let them know that you have a Batna, okay, an alternative. Is it a bluff? So whether it's a bluff or not, these are the three possible outcomes from that statement. So number one, the current supplier lowers their price to match or to improve on the alternative, okay? The supplier refuses to adjust, in which case, if your alternative was okay, then you can go work with them, which is why you don't need to bluff. Number three, they can compromise. So, okay, you compromise and you reach an agreement. So this could be something like bulk discount, better payment terms, things of those nature. So that second option where they say no and now you have no choice but to go with your 5% guy, you see, that won't work well if it was a bluff. That's the reason why you don't bluff. For the same reason, you also don't reveal a weak one. Now, number three, don't reveal your Batna too early. That's a problem. Like if you start a negotiation from a position of if you don't give us a deal, we are going to walk away because you have an alternative, then that person just realizes, okay, this person is coming from an adversarial position. And then it switches from a collaborative negotiation to a win-lose negotiation where they want to win. Basically it comes down to, you get to a point where they don't care about the relationship, they just care about the result because that is what you've told them, that is what you've shown them, that's what you're going to do. And so in that case, okay, if you're adversarial, why should they be friendly? So they also get adversarial. So that's a problem with revealing it too early. Either you might come out aggressive, or you could just give them time to work on their counter offer. Okay? So you have to be careful with that. You have to be careful not to reveal your alternative, your walkaway position too early. So the idea is to hold on and use your Batna when you have all the relevant information. Number four, always improve your Batna. Look, okay, it's one thing to have an alternative. It's another thing to work on alternative and make it stronger. An example here from a geopolitical sense before we come into, look, think of it this way. When you see these the US relationship and the rest of the Europe, Mexico, Canada, all that stuff, okay, with the tariffs, the last thing that you can do is for one country that has a big GDP to levy tariff on you, and then as a politician you just go there and say, yeah, we are countering that. I mean, we talked about that. You're countering that. It's like, no, first of all, you need to improve. Do you have alternatives? It's like, once you boil down things in a country, okay? Yeah, the country is big. But once you boil down, rather you bring down the supply chain to business, okay? Just bring it down to business logic. You realize it's just a question of this supply is expensive. Can you get another supplier? So if you don't have that, then all this chest beating or chest thumbing and all that is just it's just to impress the average voter. I'm not saying that whatever is happening is okay or not okay. I don't. It's business, okay? What I'm saying is just like that. It's simple. It's just logic, okay? Like in any business scenario, that's what you do. You use your request for quotations to understand what other suppliers are going to be supplying you at, okay? You request for them. And if that doesn't work, then you try to find. It's like when somebody says, I'm selling you a product, so any product. When someone says, I'm selling you this notebook, okay, and they insist, we are going to charge you 20 or 50. And if you don't have a choice, if you really don't have a choice in terms of what you can do about the price, then yeah, so the price is non-negotiable. Then how about the payment terms? How about the delivery schedule? How about, so all those alternatives, those are things you can use to have a better alternative. You can have another supplier who's probably going to supply for the same price, but with better delivery schedule, with better lead time, with better payment, payment timeline. The point here is always work to improve your walkaway position in any negotiation. That's the thing. Keep on looking for tips, tricks, if you can call it that, okay, to improve your best alternative to that particular agreement. So like that could be like the other guy, the Ukraine guy. His strategy was, I'll run to Europe, and then Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, is like, we are going to give you guys money. Like, yeah, you think you're doing that because you're a hero. No, to this guy, that's just an alternative to the other guy who said you're not going to supply you with anything. So you see, it's just one person trying to improve their position in negotiation. So that's the thing you do. You always want to, I'm not saying that was the best strategy. Actually, I'm just saying you work on improving your strategy. So that's number 4. Number 5, be careful not to be talked out of your Batna. Because the thing you have to remember here is that every party in that negotiation is trying to get a better deal. Okay? They're trying to get the best out of the negotiation. The supplier is trying to get something that works for them. The buyer is trying to get something that works for them. In fact, to understand this, if you are negotiating, maybe you want to buy a car, okay? And so you go to like a dealership. So in this case, you say something like, I've got a great deal waiting for me at the VW dealership down the street, but I wanted to see what Subaru had to offer first. What do you think the Subaru dealer guy is going to say? When you tell them that you have a good deal at VW, then this guy is probably going to tell you about the last VW car he had and how problematic that car was and how much it cost him to run, the maintenance and all that stuff. And that he'll even suggest that, look, even if you don't want to buy a Subaru, I'd rather you go buy a Honda or something. Like, they'll just talk you into thinking your idea is the most ridiculous one you've ever had. You have to be careful, okay, not to be talked out of your walkaway position. So that's important. Have one, make sure it's good enough, and then make sure they don't talk you out of it. Because if they're a good salesperson, or even a good negotiator, because both, okay, that's what they're going to do. They'll talk you out of it. They'll make your deal look ridiculous, okay? And in the case of like the US and all that, they'll even tweet it, well, X or whatever it is, how you're being, the point is they'll make it look as bad as possible so that you start doubting yourself. So you have to be careful not to be talked out of a deal. Now, number next, do encourage the other party to share their Batna. Because how else are you going to convince them that their deal is bad? Okay, so number 5, you don't want them to talk you out of your deal, but you out of your alternative, right? You want them, number 6, to share theirs so that you can tell them how ridiculous it is, or so that you can develop a plan to counter it. Anyway, look, all this stuff and many more are available in our, zeroightnetwork.com, the website. So check that one out. In addition, just check out the description. I've put some information there that you can use to access our tutorial on, or my tutorial in this case, on commercial contracting. So in procurement and supply, that is buying and selling basically. Okay, procurement, supply, it's just buying and selling. So it's commercial contracting. Commercial negotiation. There is also commercial contracting if you like that. So commercial negotiation, check that out. If you like it, let me know. Otherwise, if you have any question, okay, do let me know. I'll see you in the next video.